Welcome everybody to 1 hour of miniature goodness, and today we are painting a little Loch Ness monster. This is from one of the expansions from the Bones 5 Kickstarter. I don't know its proper name from the Bones 5 Kickstarter, but I'm going to call him Nessie, and that's what we're going with. So I'm going to say hello to everybody in chat first of all. We've got Scorpio in the house, we've got Michelle, and absolutely fantastic news, Michelle. Absolutely over the moon, that's brilliant news. Rod's in the house, Gareth the Star Wars Man is in the house, Muse's Touch is in the house, blah, 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 blah. Mr. Coldair's in the house, hello Coldair, Ty's in the house, all the goblins are in the house, and Tal, Tal's thank you for subscribing, Corey. We've also got HNH Minis. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so let me explain what's going on today. I am going to be quickly painting this up as a Loch Ness monster, and once it's finished, this will be sent in Corey's Christmas box. So that he collects like dinosaurs and things. So this is as close as I could get to one of the minis for him for his box. Anyway, what we're going to do, this isn't glued on. Take him off there. I've got the base glued onto here. This is a little 4-inch by I think it's 8-inch MDF board. Now in the lochs where I live in Scotland, what happens is, well, not only are these lochs absolutely the best brown trout fly fishing you could ever possibly imagine in the whole world, they also flood a lot. So what happens is you'll get all the banks around the loch, and you'll have all the rocks going around the lochs. And what happens, you have all these little trees going around the loch, and what happens is the water will rise, and all these trees and the rocks will just be like sticking out of the water. So what I'm going to try to do today as well with the base is have it so we've got little trees dotted around this base, and it'll be like a water going all the way around the base and the rock, so they all stick out from the base. But we'll get to that in a bit. So I'll move this out of the way. I'll chuck that down there, and we'll start painting the Loch Ness monster. Now what I've done as well is we've got the little rock golems that I did a little show on the other day. I've base coat them with Dragon Black by MSP Paints. And while the paint is drying on the Nessie today, we can probably get all these quickly finished and painted. So that's the backup in case we need to move on to something else if the paint's still wet. So did they call it Nessie as well? Well, Reaper just knew. Reaper just knew, didn't they? It does look like a little Loch Ness monster. So there we are. They must have been thinking of the Goblin King when they put this one out on their Bones 5. Awesome stuff. I didn't know that. That's brilliant, Michelle. Okay, so paints I'm using for today are, we got some Dragon White, Dragon Black, Tempest Grey, we got some Turf Green, and we are using some Dungeon Slime. So what I'll do, I'll give these a quick mix, get them on the palette, and then we can start getting them onto Nessie. Yes, the brown trout fishing. I know Rod is a fisherman as well, but the brown trout fishing in Scotland and the salmon fishing is phenomenal. Personally, I'm not a salmon fisherman. I am a fly fisherman for trout. So we're talking rainbow trout, brown trout, tiger trout, blue trout, silver trout. We get all these different types of trout in Scotland. We have some of the most famous lochs for fly fishing in Scotland, and we have some of the most famous fisheries in Scotland as well for fly fishing. Some of the British records, UK records for trout, of course, are in Scotland. Oop, got my paintbrush in there. Yes, there's a trout called the tiger trout, Tal, and it's actually got stripes like a tiger. It's absolutely a beautiful fish. I posted a picture of it on Discord or Twitter not that long ago. It's absolutely gorgeous. Hello, Mechanical Frog. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to start mixing some paint. We're going to add some of this green and some of this slime. So we've got a lighter green, taking it off the brush, and then we're just going to go over the Nessie. And this will just pick out all the details. It's a very, very simple paint. Because we're trying to make it look more realistic, we're going for the dark greens and colours that you'd probably expect to see on this type of animal if it really was in a place like the Loch Ness. So we'll just keep it all nice and dark, some highlights, and we're going to just get all this on, and then we shall start adding an ink wash, and while that ink wash is drying we can move on to the base and do other things. Now, does anybody in chat believe in the Loch Ness Monster? Now, I personally believe with Loch Ness, because it actually is a loch that has a tidal current, comes in from the sea. I actually believe that it was one of the old dinosaurs. Now, Corey, if he's in chat, he's the dinosaur man. There is a dinosaur. There is a dinosaur out there that does resemble what the Loch Ness Monster actually looks like. I personally think it's a fantastic, what we could call a fantasy adventure in the Loch Ness. Claire, Scorpio and myself, we've been to Loch Ness. It's an absolutely beautiful place to visit. If you ever go to Scotland, Loch Ness is definitely on your A list of places to visit. It's the most beautiful place to go. Exactly. You just don't know. All I know is there's been sightings in Scotland of the Loch Ness Monster over the years. Unless the creatures were breeding in the loch, they'd have all died of old age by now anyway. But I did see some Google items. Did some research on the Loch Ness Monster, and in China, some of the dredgers, when the fishing dredgers, they pulled up the remains of an old dinosaur type fish. So it is possible that one of these dinosaurs could actually have been in the loch at one stage, and of course it's died off now maybe, but We don't know. We don't know. But it is a beautiful thing to think about. Just going to highlight the tops now, just make it a little bit brighter on the tops. Yes, Ty. I used the turf. I used the turf green for the actual initial primer coat. Oh, we're having a raid from Reaper. It would be absolutely amazing if the Loch Ness monster was still in the loch. I do believe something was there. Like I say, the loch does have many underground caves going into the loch. So these dinosaurs. Thank you for following, and thank you, Reaper, for the raid. There is loads of underground caves going into Loch Ness. So these old dinosaurs probably could have gone in and out. But like I say, if you ever do go to Scotland, you really do need to go to the Loch Ness. It's absolutely... Thank you, everybody, for following. So today I'm painting the Loch Ness monster, or Nessie. And of course, because I'm from Scotland, I thought it was definitely a miniature that needed to be painted. So all I'm doing, I've started off with turf green by MSP Paints. I'm also, what I'm doing now as well is I'm mixing turf green and I'm mixing some dungeon slime. So we got like a 50-50 mix, and all I'm doing is just dry brushing that onto Nessie, and we are just building up some lighter colours. A very simple, easy little paint job, and we're just highlighting the highest areas now. Top of the thighs there, and top of the flippers. And it's just simple and easy. And that's all we need to do for that so far. So we can move on to the base now. Oh, okay, I'll talk about the painting contest. Yes, on Twitter, because Reaper Miniatures have a quarterly painting contest on Twitter, on Facebook, sorry. I'm actually going to start doing a painting contest. It's starting in October, and it's the same type of thing, except it's going to be a Reaper only painting competition, and it's going to be every 3 months, and you can enter any Reaper miniature that you paint, any single Reaper miniature. There's no particular model, and this is just so you don't have to spend money on buying a miniature for a particular entry. So you can just show off your miniatures and you'll be judged, and there will be a winner. But that's on Twitter. So if you follow my links to Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter or Goblin Paint. But what happens is I'll show you now. The first place winner will get this magical trophy. I've had this trophy custom made. This is the Goblin King trophy, and this is going to be only for Twitter. So the first place winner will win this trophy. And I had the Goblin King custom made by an American artist, and it's the Goblin King on his throne of bones. He's holding a paintbrush. He's got a crown of paintbrushes, and I've got a nice little plaque on there saying winner Reaper Miniatures Goblin Paint. There's no entry fee, there's no nothing. All you got to do is paint your miniatures, paint your Reaper miniatures, post them on Twitter and tag me in Goblin Paint on the Twitter channel, and then after the 3 months are up, you'll be picked and the winner will be announced. All the pictures and all the entrants will go into a video, so there'll be a YouTube video of everybody who enters, and of course the winner will be announced on the video as well. But yes, this is the actual trophy that the winner will receive. I don't know if it will be a popular thing to do, but I did Goblin Paint about 2 years ago, and it was quite popular on Twitter, so I'm hoping a few people will enter. And it's for amateur painters, so it's just to inspire people to paint. It's just to get you painting your miniatures, and it's just for a bit of fun. So if you want to enter, then just go onto Twitter, and it's all good. It's all good. There'll be lots of rules and regulations, and everything will be posted for you to see on Twitter. So it's just a case of painting Reaper miniatures, tagging me in your post with the entry, and I shall do the rest, and then the winner will be picked after the 3 months are up. It is perfect. It is perfect. Okay, there we are. So that's the Goblin Paint that I'll be doing to get everybody to painting their Reaper miniatures on Twitter. Facebook, of course, you've got the official Reaper Miniatures doing their thing, so I would not want to step on their toes at all. But doing it on Twitter, I think, is a fantastic way to promote my favourite company and their miniatures. So this is what I'm doing to help bring the love. Okay, so moving on to the base. What we're going to do with the base, I got some Tempest Grey, so we're just going to give that a little mix. I'm going to start doing these little bases. Hello, Bull GM. And don't everybody is welcome to enter the competition, and also you will score brownie points if you add a nice base to your miniature. Now, I can't stress this enough. I am all for people bringing their own little sculpts into their bases. So if you're doing your Reaper miniatures for Goblin Paint, if you have a nice scenic base for your miniature, you do score brownie points, because that really appeals to me. Okay, let's get this on. That's very simple. We've got a simple rock in the middle, Again, we're going back with the dry brush. We'll actually go for a bigger dry brush for this one. We'll just go for this big chunky one here. Just taking the paint onto my tissue, taking a little bit of paint off, and we can just fly over this nice heavy layer. I'm not worried about getting paint everywhere. There is going to be method in the madness for this little dioramic base. By using the black, we got a nice shadow already. So we're just going to keep going around and then add in some white. This will highlight the grey. I've got some dragon white. Oh, better give that a mix first. I'm just going to add a little bit of white now to my grey. Mix that in, make it lighter. So we're just going to make this rock a little bit lighter. We don't have to do too much there. Of course, the Nessie will be in the middle. We just want to make it lighter on the tips of the rock here, so a little bit more at the top here. That's a little bit extra light. There we are. That's all we need to do for the rock. Simple as that. Let's wash my brush. Oh, I'm just using, these aren't Agent Marvel, these aren't actually proper dry brushes. This is a vehicle and terrain brush from Army Painter, but I just find they're soft enough that I can use as a dry brush. I do have some Army Painter dry brushes, which are the dry brush from the dry brush range. Of course, this is a large dry brush from Army Painter. Very nice little dry brush. But what you'll find is my dry brushing isn't actually super dry brushing. Mine is more mine is more wet dry brushing. I don't know if that's a thing. What it is, I use the paint quite thickly on my brush, so I can kind of wet blend with my paint as I go around the miniature, and then for the highest parts, then I will take all the paint off and start really using it as a dry brush. But I use my paint quite heavily, so I use a different technique to actual proper dry brushing, where you really take the paint off the brush and just leave those parts on your miniature. So it's more of a wet blending type of thing going on. I can't really give you the right yes, that's it. Okay, moving on again. Now, like I say, it's a very simple quick paint today. This is what we'll do here is I'm going to just add this. This is game wash. I have started finding these game wash. We got the black and the brown game wash, and I find that they are really nice, cheap alternatives to like Games Workshop, Nun Oil, and etc. etc. This is £7.99 on Amazon. I don't know what the price is in dollars, sorry, but all I know is this costs roughly the same as a pot and a half of one pot of your Nun Oil. So you're saving a small fortune buying these pots, and for doing dioramas and larger models, they are really nice. I wouldn't recommend them for high detail professional miniature painting, because they can be a little bit sticky, but for amateur painting, for what we're doing today, works a treat, and you are saving loads and loads of cash. Okay, so it's very simply, I'm going to get another piece of tissue, and we're going to add the ink wash and then take away the ink wash all over this miniature and let it dry. This is like a light brown ink wash. Going over every single part of the miniature. And what we do is we take off the ink wash as we go along and just leave it in the recesses. So just using that tissue to take away quite a lot of the ink wash. What's happening, it's giving a nice effect and shadow, and showing up the highlights nice. Goes into all the recesses, nice and simple. If you've just followed me and you're from Reaper, and you don't know what I'm about, my painting is all about getting as many miniatures painted as possible to a tabletop standard. Unfortunately, you will not find super professional painting here. It's all about getting your miniatures done for your tabletop. Hopefully I give a little bit of inspiration to a lot of people to paint their miniatures. I have been painting miniatures for well over 30 years now, and I'm still learning all the time. There's so many absolutely amazing artists out there, so it's one of those hobbies where you just learn. You'll never be complete. and like they say, there's always a better painter. No matter how good you are, there's always a better painter. So don't let anybody put you off painting your miniatures, because you will find there's always somebody better out there. It's just enjoying the hobby and de-stressing and having a great time. Now, if you notice with the tissue, I'm just taking it off the highest areas, and that gives us a shadow under Nessie's belly. And that brown works really well for the fish, as I call it. I just work around the tail now. Take off these extra parts. Just on the tips of these tails where I had that brightest green, we can just remove that, and it'll be nice and bright again. Okay. Okay. There we are. So very simple. All we've got to do now is paint the teeth and the eyes. We'll let this dry now, and then we'll come back to that if we've got some time. But we can go back to the base now. Now this base is going to be a water logged, or so this will be here, just to give you an example. Let me just get the there we are. Okay, so Nessie's going to be there on the rock, and it's like I was saying to you before, quite a few places I go fly fishing in Scotland on the lochs, you'll find that the lochs, with the heavy rain we get in Scotland, they flood. So what happens is you get all these little trees sticking out of the water and the rocks, so the whole area here will all be water. So what we're going to do is, I went and got some twigs from the old doggy walk, and what I've done, I've sawed them off. I used one of these little army painter little saws, and I've just cut the wood nice and flush, and on the other ends of the wood I just used the little crafting knife, and I've made them all nickety, like they've all been broken, almost like the Loch Ness monster's gone through this little kind of swampy part of the loch and broken off the tops of the trees, you know. So what we can do with these now is we can actually stick these to the board with some super glue. I like to use the Loctite super glue, liquid super glue. Lots of people like the gel. I don't like the gel, and if you are using gel with Reaper miniatures, it can go very clumpy. So if you use this Loctite super glue, which is the liquid super glue, definitely recommended for Reaper miniatures. Okay, so I've already cut these nice and flush. So what we're going to do is just stick these around the board. I've got a little bit of super glue on the top there, like so. And we just, hair, go away hair, there you go, and we just stick that on there. And another one. And we'll have this one just here. One more here. The space will be painted with dark greens. The biggest mistake I've seen people make when they paint water is they paint it blue. When you're younger, the sky is blue and water is blue, so you paint your miniatures with blue water. Blue isn't what the colour of water really is, unless you're in some tropical island. What you'll find is water is very dark. It can be greens, browns. I like to go with greens for my water. On a very hot summer's day, you might get the reflection of the sky on water, which gives the effect of the blue, of course. But most of the time, what you'll find with water is you try to keep it as dark as possible, especially for lochs and rivers. But you'll never get a strong blue looking river. So if you want to make your rivers look more realistic, you want to try and keep your colours dark. Okay, so as you can see, what's happening here is we got the Loch Ness monster. He's on his little rock there. Now you can imagine in front of this, or going around, we've got the loch, and this is just like a little corner of the loch, and it's flooded. So what's going to happen is this will all be water, like so, and then we've got him in the middle. Now what we need to do to give an effect to the water is to add rings around the bottom. Now this is a perfect use for your plastic putty from Vallejo. So what we need to do is add the Vallejo putty in little circles to give rings, so it looks like the water's hitting these trees. So let me just show you quickly. What we need to do is just make little rings. This will give a ripple effect going around, and of course it will give us, when we paint the water after, this will give us that ripple effect that we need to make it look more like it's actually in water. So what we're doing is just adding small little areas like so. I mean, the white is shown up nicely, so I can actually, so you can get an idea of how this is going to work. Okay, let's see if I can get my head around this. So we're just going making circles. We don't do a whole circle around because we just want a hint. We're just looking for a hint of movement in the water. But what's happening by adding this Vallejo putty, when we paint over this with our colours that we're going to use, it will give a lovely little effect to that water. You'll actually get the wave of the water from where the water is like hitting the rocks and etc. So it's just eye candy, really. But what's this Vallejo putty gives us a little ridge to work from, and once it's painted over, it really looks very, very effective. Now we can do the same around the rocks, so the water is kind of hitting the rocks, so just on certain parts. So just on the edges, where the water's hitting the edge of the rocks, we just have a slight ripple, as it's a very calm, it's not like a heavy, I mean, lochs, you don't get real big waves in lochs. So we're looking at a still water, loch, and the waves are just rippling up against the rocks and then moving away. I say it's like icing a cake. So we just make sure we got these little circlets going around the tree stumps, and you can use this for all sorts of miniature techniques. I just found trial and error by using this Vallejo putty, because it hardens to a solid plastic. It's perfect for painting over. So once we paint over the water, it will really look fantastic. I mean, we can't paint over it today because it won't be dry in time, but as you can, I'm just showing you what you can do. But on the black, it's shown up really well, so you can actually see what I'm talking about. So there we are. Maybe a little bit just here. Just on that bit there. So what we can do, we can maybe have a couple of little reeds popping out through the grass as well. But you can see where this is going. Okay, I'm going to let that ink wash dry a little bit longer. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly paint up these little earth elementals with our greys. So we'll just get these little 6 quickly done up. See what time we're on? Yeah, we can do a few of these. That's fine. So once again, we're going back doing exactly the same as I showed you with the grey before, but this time we're doing it for these 6 little earth elementals. we use a bigger brush this time. We use this, go back to this one. And again, we start with the darker, we're using the Tempest Grey again. And this time I'm taking more of the paint off the brush. But because I've done, again, this is Dragon Black I've used for these miniatures. And I've stuck these on here with blue tack onto this board. This is actually the same board, MDF board, that I've used for the Nessie miniature. So all we need to do is just quickly go over these, and it takes a couple of minutes. We'll have a little army of earth elementals come to life. There we are, that's a bit better. Again, we just go over the whole miniature with grey to start with. These are fantastic little miniatures to practice on. I mean, you could probably get a couple of hundred of these done in a day if you wanted to. But it's nice, simple beginners miniatures if you wanted to get your kids into painting. Get them a couple of earth elementals. Earth elementals are so much fun to paint because it's all rock. So we're just starting off, and it's a great way to get someone into the hobby just by using that Dragon Black to begin with. And then just dry brush all that grey, and it's really impressive. And if you are beginning painting, it's a lovely way to build up your confidence, because you can't really go wrong unless you're Tal. You can't really go wrong. You can't really go wrong painting little rock elementals. So like I say, this is the main colour on there. We've got the dark grey. Now we're going to start adding lighter grey. Thank you for following. And again, we're just going to build up those colours. Now, when I paint my miniatures, if you watch the show regular or you've been with me for a long time, you'll know I always use the colours and the dark colours to my advantage. Now with these miniatures, what we're doing is we're highlighting the miniature, but we're only highlighting the highest areas. So what's happening is we're getting a natural shadow underneath the miniature. So what we're doing is we're just building up the highest areas, like on the back here. It's a really fast speed paint. And we're just going on to the highest areas. That black is working for us, so the bottom of the miniature is nice and dark, the top of the miniature is nice and light. Get the little fingies done there, and we just keep on working with the highest areas, because I work it that the sun or the light is going straight down on my miniature, so only the highest top areas are getting any light. And we keep the bottoms nice and dark. Okay, so we just need to add a little bit more white than my original grey, just to make the last highlight on the top of these. And it's the final highlight, just to bring them up, get the teeth on. just pick out the teeth there. Let's go to the teeth. Done. Okay. And move on to the backs. Again, highest areas. Just pick out the highest area. And they're almost done. All we need to do now is paint in the eyes. So I shall give this a wash. As long as he's not stealing my motorbike, Sculptor, there's not a problem with him revving his motorbike. Okay, now for the eyes, what we can do is, because it's like an earth elemental, let's keep it nice and green, nice little green colour. So what we need to do, we got some, of course, I like using this green here. This is this Tesseract Glow from Games Workshop. Now, as you can see, this colour does separate a lot, and this is what's absolutely fantastic about this paint mixer I got. A couple of blasts on there, and it mixes the whole thing together really easy. This 4E's scientific paint mixer. This will even mix your 90s Games Workshop hex pots. It's absolutely amazing, well worth every penny. Okay, so we need some more dragon white. Now when you're doing eyes on the earth elementals, you want to make this glow as much as possible. So what we're going to do is use some white for the eyes first. Okay, we'll get all the eyes done. Very simple, just get some white in there. Oh, can you see what I'm doing? No, my board's in the way. So we're just in the eye sockets, we're just getting that white in there. And this will really help that ink wash glow. So we've got the eyes in. We'll let that dry. We'll go back to Nessie and we'll get the Nessie's eyeballs done while we got the white going. So we just added the white for the Loch Ness monster. So I tried to do all sorts of things at the same time, so we don't waste too much paint. Now for these earth elementals, what I like to use with the earth elemental is I like to use some Agrax Earthshade. This is a nice dark wash. Now most of you will know about Agrax Earthshade. It's a very, very popular wash. But it works really well with rocks. Now the key to adding this one again is not to add it to all the miniature. We add it in little spots. So what we do is we get our little brush again. We shall, this time I am going to be using some cotton buds because they're smaller miniatures. Cotton buds is a fantastic item to remove ink washes. So let's get to the camera angle, see what I'm doing. and we're just going to start adding some browns just on certain parts of the rocks. Oh, would help if you can see. Excuse me getting in the way. It's my... So certain parts of the rocks, we've got little rocks on all these different... We just, on some of the rocks, we just add a little bit of this ink wash. This gives a variation in colour to the actual elemental on the rocks, and it breaks up the miniature and gives more detail. So it's only on certain parts, but it really does add to the miniature. Just by adding that little brown, it makes it come to life a little bit more. And with the cotton bud, I'm going to take any excess off and just kind of blend in the brown a little bit more. Okay, moving on back to the front. Yes, you can really have a lovely little army of these little miniatures all painted up in no time at all. And just by adding a few little extra bits of ink wash here and there, it all works very, very well. Okie dokie. So again, we'll just go over the cotton bud just to make sure we haven't got any excess ink. One of the worst things I keep on mentioning about adding ink wash is pooling of ink wash. Many people make the mistake of really going extra heavy with the ink washes, but what happens is the ink wash will pool because it's a very thin liquid, so it will go into all the recesses and build up and build up and build up, and you'll end up with little gloopy balls of ink wash on your miniatures. Sometimes it can't be helped and you miss it, but what I do is, if you keep your little cotton buds handy, it's a great way just to take off a little bit of that ink wash. So what you do is just keep an eye on the miniature once you've added your ink wash, and if you do see any pooling, if you do see a little bit of extra ink that you don't want, you can just take it away nice and simple with one of these little cotton buds. Okay, we're doing really well today. Our Nessie is coming along fantastic. Like I say, a very simple paint, but very, very effective. Those eyes are going to be dry in a minute. I think we can do Nessie's eye now, and then we'll go and do those green ones. Now, as you can see, the ink wash is drying very well on Nessie, and because we did those highlights beforehand, as you can see, it's absolutely, it looks fab. It looks fab, and it's taken me 5 minutes to paint this. And it just works really well. So all we need to do is we're painting the teeth and the eye. Now what we're going to do is just a pupil of the eye, so we get some dragon black. And we just need a tiny little brush before adding the pupil. Let me just find a small brush. Not that one. Here we go. No, that's a crappy one. I want that one. Hundreds of brushes, never know which one to pick. There you go. That's the one I'm after. Okay. Get a point with my little tongue. Okay, so adding the pupil is very simple. We just get the most tiniest paint on the end of our paintbrush, and we go straight in, and we're just going to add a nice round eye. Want it quite large. There you go. And the same with the other side. Keeping it quite large. Now if you are a fisherman, you'll know fish's eyes have quite large pupils because they have to see underwater. So keeping that pupil as large as possible so Nessie can see underwater. Yeah. Okay, so that's our Nessie so far. We'll get this. We'll get the green in for the eyes, and I think we're about up to our 8 o'clock then. Let's see what the time is. Yeah. Okay, so we'll just add that tesseract glow to our rock elementals or earth elementals, and we shall call it a night. Again, I want to thank everybody who has followed me tonight. It's absolutely fantastic, and thank you to Reaper Miniatures for supporting me and raiding me. It's an absolute honour and a pleasure. You know I love you guys very, very much. It's absolutely awesome stuff. Now, before I do finish off tonight, I will mention that tomorrow night, I'm doing an extra stream once a month, and it's a special stream with Gareth, the Star Wars man. He's probably in chat still somewhere. And what we're doing is we're painting the same miniature from Reaper Miniatures, and we'll both be on the show, and we'll just be painting and chatting and having a blast painting the miniatures together. And that's at that's 8 o'clock. That's 8 o'clock on Friday tomorrow night, and that's only happening once a month. And it's just me and Gareth, the Star Wars man. Well, they are okay. We'll raid Reaper back then. We'll raid Reaper back. I'm just painting in these eyes. As you can see, the green works absolutely fantastic with these miniatures. Okay, nearly finished. There we are. So there we are. Very, very simple and easy way to paint your earth elementals. All we need to do now, we can add a little bit of grass to maybe dot it over the rocks. But that's as easy as it gets to quickly paint 6 miniatures in 10 minutes. Awesome stuff.